Welcome to Recapping Movie Expilan. In the first scene of the movie, a woman by the name of Tess Marshall arrives at an Airbnb rental in the pouring rain. When she gets to the door, she discovers that, contrary to the booking agent's instructions, the home keys are not in the lockbox. Tess attempts to contact the person who reserved her but can only get through to voicemail. As a result, she only leaves a callback request. She discovers that the lights inside the house are on, which only makes her uncertainty worse. She rings the doorbell after that and is shocked to see a man inside. The man is identified as Keith, and here we discover that he is still renting the same home, suggesting that the man invites Tess inside even though it is pouring rain because he feels bad for her. Keith then demonstrates to her his app-based booking confirmation to show he is not lying. Tess starts looking for the closest hotel but discovers that it is fully booked for tonight. She is still uncomfortable being in the same place as the man. Keith, who is listening in on her conversation, alerts her that there is now a sizable medical convention in town, making it impossible to locate a free hotel room. He then suggests that she spend the night and allows her to do so in the bedroom. She enters the bedroom after he brings her bag in and discovers his wallet inside. She then decides to take a photo of his ID as a precaution. She returns the wallet to him before taking a shower. When Tess returns to the hallway, he is waiting for her there with 2 glasses and an unopened bottle of wine. She gently declines to drink while remaining attentive and accepts to sit across from him as the two converse informally. Keith admits that he had actually seen Catherine James' most recent film after learning that she is in town for a job interview with the director. In addition, Catherine James' upcoming movie will focus on a Detroit music collective, and Keith just so happens to be in it. She enters the bedroom after he brings her bag in and discovers his wallet inside. She then decides to take a photo of his ID as a precaution. She returns the wallet to him before taking a shower. When Tess returns to the hallway, he is waiting for her there with 2 glasses and an unopened bottle of wine. She gently declines to drink while remaining attentive and accepts to sit across from him as the two converse informally. Keith admits that he had actually seen Catherine James' most recent film after learning that she is in town for a job interview with the director. In addition, Catherine James' upcoming movie will focus on a Detroit music collective, and Keith just so happens to be in it. She laughs at a ludicrous demonstration of how to flip a set of brand new sheets. When he saw her door swing open, he wondered if it was him, but he bewilderedly replies, "No." She says her sorry and locks her door before going back to sleep. Although she doesn't see Keith when she wakes up in the morning, she does discover a message in which he claims to be out and about, and that they had a great time the night before. When she finally leaves the house for her job interview, she realizes for the first time that every single house in the neighborhood is entirely abandoned and run down, with the exception of the one where she is staying with Keith. She disregards the obvious red flag, though, because she is running late, and goes to the interview. When the interview is over, Catherine James queries her regarding which he begins screaming at her to leave the house. Tess, who is terrified, quickly grabs the house keys and locks herself inside before the attacker can reach her. While keeping an eye out for the man, she tries dialing 911, but regrettably they were unable to send out a unit for her at this time. She then gathers her belongings and attempts to survive for the time being within the house. Later, she realizes they are out of toilet paper upstairs and goes to the basement to retrieve some. But as soon as she climbs back up, the door gently opens and shuts by itself, trapping her within. Her phone was in the bedroom. She then realizes, adding insult to injury, the house keys. She can see how dark it is within and that there is a foreboding door in the basement. She then waits until she becomes bored in the basement before attempting to use a mirror to reflect light into the pitch black space, which turns out to be a straight hallway. She finally makes the decision to go because she has nothing else to do. Once inside the straight hallway, she finds another door, a little chamber with dried blood on the bed, a bucket, and a very old camera is revealed when she opens it. She is so horrified by what she sees that she immediately returns to the basement. Fortunately, Keith does arrive. She then calls to him through the little window, gives him the key, and asks him to come and save her. Following his action, she starts to panic and grabs her suitcase to run away while babbling about discovering a spooky chamber with a bed, camera, and bucket. However, Keith doesn't believe it's strange to find these things in a basement and chooses to investigate for himself. In case the cellar door closes on its own, he instructs her to wait upstairs. It doesn't take her long to lose patience. The door is slowly shutting as she tries to check on him, so this time, she makes sure to use a chair to hold the door open before going downstairs. He ignores her repeated calls, so she tries again. Tess then turns back toward the room and continues down the dim hallway. Strangely, she doesn't discover him there. When she returns to the dim hallway, she finds that there is actually a second door that leads to a flight of steps that descends. Once more calling his name, he starts to scream for assistance, forcing her to descend. In the pitch-black corridors, Tess follows the sound of his howls and comes across numerous rusting cages with doggy bowls. However, before they can flee, a terrible naked humanoid horror stops them and smashes Keith's head against the wall until he dies. The creature then shouts at Tess, after which it is unclear what will follow. The successful Hollywood actor A.J. Gilbride is seen in the following scene receiving an unexpected call from his co-workers. They inform him that due to an alleged sexual misconduct against a co-star, he has been sacked from his most recent show. He takes off for Detroit to sell an asset in order to save money for a lawyer for his continuing litigation because his career is in danger. AJ visits a Detroit rental property he owns. Coincidentally, the asset is the exact home in Brightmoor. The basement is the only remaining location to search for the squatters. He gets dressed and equips himself with a flashlight and a small knife. He hears a loud thump coming from one side of the wall as soon as he steps into the basement. He also finds the protruding rope and unlocks the secret entrance. The room with the bed and camera, however, doesn't alarm AJ because he isn't the brightest. Instead, he sees this as a chance to increase the value of his property because more space equals more money. He starts by measuring using a measuring tape, estimating the size of the dingy room and the dark hallway. Even more thrilled, he begins measuring as he descends after finding another concealed door heading deeper beneath. When AJ sees the cages, he doesn't even flinch. Instead, he continues walking until he comes across some light coming from farther down the tunnel. As he approaches it, he finds a room with a bad odor and a little TV broadcasting an old instructional video on how to nurse a baby. He decides to let go of his measuring tape when he suddenly feels a tug on it. He panics and runs further into the tunnel after hearing a terrifying noise. At this point, the creature materializes in front of him, a bottle for them to drink. Tess begs IJ to follow suit and drink the disgusting milk because the creature only wants them to be her offspring, but he refuses. The creature enters the hole with them after seeing something's off and tenderly cradles Tess. The thing approaches AJ and begins to speak to him in a frightful voice like a baby. Tess is left in the pit by herself when she grabs AJ by the legs and drags him away. In the TV room, the mother drags AJ and starts pressuring him to nurse. Tess, meantime, takes advantage of the opening to crawl out of the hole and get away. Unfortunately, she steps over the measuring tape and makes a noise, which alerts the beast. Just as the mother is about to reach her, she is helped by a homeless person. The creature in the house was actually the man from the earlier scenario, as it turned out, and the homeless people in the neighborhood already knew about him. Tess needs to flee right away because, according to the homeless guy, the thing will return at night and look for her. Additionally, the creature is not by itself in the basement. AJ is currently exploring the tunnels when he comes upon a bell and a power wire and chooses to pursue it. He finds Frank himself within a room with an extremely elderly man. Tess has returned to the surface and arrived at a local gas station and used the store owner's phone to make a 911 call. She persuades the police to visit the residence to save AJ despite the fact that they treat her poorly and assume she is a drug addict when they arrive at the scene. However, when the officers arrive, they are dubious of Tess's allegations and believe that she is simply another delusional homeless person, so they drive off. During this time, Frank motions for AJ to bring him his nightstand drawer, which AJ complies. Later, AJ finds a collection of tape recordings labeled with different women's names, so he chooses to play one of them. It turns out that it includes an audio of a lady being sexually assaulted. AJ starts screaming at Frank out of frustration, but when Frank pulls a gun out of the drawer, everything stops. AJ doesn't remember he has a gun until they reach the top, but he foolishly fumbles with it and lets it slide out of his hands. Because he has nowhere else to go and knows Tess would attempt to save her kid, he demonstrates what a jerk he is by throwing her off the tower, and she acts as predicted. When AJ goes downstairs to check on Tess, he assumes the mother has passed away. We can observe that the mother protected her from the fall because Tess ended up surviving. Then he claims that he has no idea what happened and that the only thing he recalls is that Tess started to stumble. The thing suddenly stands up and snatches AJ. She uses a knife to cut out AJ. When the mother approaches Tess, she is in excruciating pain and resists the mother's sympathetic attempts to lift her. While Tess snatches AJ's gun, she softly tries to speak to Tess and tries to lead her back down the tunnels. Then, with a little expression of regret on her face, she points it at the mother and pulls the trigger. Tess then stands up and leaves the location to seek medical help. The movie stops at this point, steps over the measuring tape, and makes a noise, which alerts the beast. Just as the mother is about to reach her, she is helped by a homeless person. The creature in the house was actually the man from the earlier scenario, as it turned out, and the homeless people in the neighborhood already knew about him. Tess needs to flee right away because, according to the homeless guy, the thing will return at night and look for her. Additionally, the creature is not by itself in the basement. AJ is currently exploring the tunnels when he comes upon a bell and a power wire and chooses to pursue it. He finds Frank himself within a room with an extremely elderly man. Tess has returned to the surface and arrived at a local gas station and used the store owner's phone to make a 911 call. She persuades the police to visit the residence to save AJ despite the fact that they treat her poorly and assume she is a drug addict when they arrive at the scene. However, when the officers arrive, they are dubious of Tess's allegations and believe that she is simply another delusional homeless person, so they drive off. During this time, Frank motions for AJ to bring him his nightstand drawer, which AJ complies. Later, AJ finds a collection of tape recordings labeled with different women's names, so he chooses to play one of them. It turns out that it includes an audio of a lady being sexually assaulted. AJ starts screaming at Frank out of frustration, but when Frank pulls a gun out of the drawer, everything stops. AJ doesn't remember he has a gun until they reach the top, but he foolishly fumbles with it and lets it slide out of his hands. Because he has nowhere else to go and knows Tess would attempt to save her kid, he demonstrates what a jerk he is by throwing her off the tower, and she acts as predicted. When AJ goes downstairs to check on Tess, he assumes the mother has passed away. We can observe that the mother protected her from the fall because Tess ended up surviving. Then he claims that he has no idea what happened and that the only thing he recalls is that Tess started to stumble. The thing suddenly stands up and snatches AJ. She uses a knife to cut out AJ. When the mother approaches Tess, she is in excruciating pain and resists the mother's sympathetic attempts to lift her. While Tess snatches AJ's gun, she softly tries to speak to Tess and tries to lead her back down the tunnels. Then, with a little